No, I'm going now.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this session. To charge or not to charge?
That is the question.
Is the question.
I really like it when people put their hands up when they join. Someone just did that, and because it looks like everyone's giving you a high five as they come in. Like, hey.
You could just imagine a stream of people running past.
Yeah, if you were in a conference room. Welcome.
So peppy. That's great.
You've muted us both, Jay.
I'm here. I didn't think I don't know how that happened.
Well,
we've got some more people coming in, so I'll hang on for a bit longer. I'm Jamie. I'm helping out with SU20 Digital, making sure that everything's running. But I also work with Rosie all of the time at Organised Fun. So it's funny that we're on the same session and I get to introduce her now.
And we're in the same house.
And we're in the same house. I'm downstairs, she's upstairs.
I get the posh office because I'm presenting. Hi, everybody. There's a couple more people coming in, so
you.
Make sure if you're saying hi, you don't just do it to panelists, because otherwise only Jamie and I can see it, so it defeats the point. So
you have an option to change all panelists and attendees, and then we'll all be able to see each other's messages and find out where people are from and what they do and all that kind of good stuff. I think we're starting to level off now, Rosie. So this is Rosie Hunnam here to present To Charge or Not to Charge. She's the founder of Organised Fun, an organisation that puts student opportunities at the heart of everything it does. So I'm going to hand to you, Rosie. You can do the full intro and I will disappear and come back to help out with any questions that you guys might have for Rosie at the end of her talk. There's a Q&A box, so make sure you submit questions throughout the session there, and we'll try and answer as many of those at the end.
Lovely, thank you. Thanks everybody for saying hi in the chat box. It's nice to see who's there. Good for networking because you can see who else is in there. I've seen a couple of people connecting with each other already, so that's lovely. So hello everybody. As Jamie said, we both work for Organised Fun. We founded Organised Fun last year. Jamie does mostly our operational techie stuff and our fund finances, and I do most of our consultancy. But one of the things that we've been doing is helping Coventry to do a little bit of the tech stuff for this conference. So Jamie's hosting, which is funny, this session. Organised Fun, we have two parts to Organised Fun. So one part is consultancy. So we help student unions, universities and colleges with their student opportunities problems. And that's paid for consultancy. We go in and work on bespoke projects. We help with training, lots of different things. And then the other part is we call it community building part. So we believe in student opportunities as a powerful change maker, and we want to be able to support all of the volunteers, all of the staff members and all of the officers who work and volunteer within student opportunities. So we do that through things like the Student Opportunities Festival that we hosted a few weeks ago, and I know some of you attended that, so thanks for attending. And we hosted the National Societies and Volunteering Awards, and then we do stuff like this, so we get involved with things for the sector and talk about interesting stuff. So today I am going to talk to you for about 40 minutes, maybe an hour, depending how many tangents I go off on and how many questions we get through, about charging or not charging for membership. Not normally a question that we consider at this time of the year because the norm is usually charging, but given the COVID pandemic, this has been a question that's come up loads and loads of times with the clients that we work with, and also it came up quite a lot during the Student Opportunities Festival as something that's been worrying people. So don't have all the answers on this, and it's definitely down to you as an individual union and for your groups to make that final call. But what we've done in this session is try and break the problem down a little bit and help you to work out how you can justify that charge and what you need to do in order to be able to do it. So this is kind of a summary of what I'm going to talk about today. As Jamie said, if you've got any questions about this, then pop them in the Q&A box. And then if you, I'll try and get through those as I can. I'll prefer to get through them at the end of the session. So I'll kind of talk to you for a little bit, and then we'll do some questions and we'll talk about anything that's come up in the session or anything related to this that you'd like a bit of support and advice on. A couple of little pitchy bits. So tomorrow we're doing another session called Keeping Student Opportunities Going as part of this conference. That's going to be run more of as a community of practice type space. So for those of you that don't know what a community of practice is, basically it's less lecture style and more chatting with you. So it's you're invited to attend. Anybody related to student opportunities is invited to attend. I will talk for about 10 to 15 minutes at the start about some themes, and then you'll go into breakout rooms and have a discussion about that with other people from across the UK. I think we're really missing some of that national networking. So I encourage you to attend that. Invite your student volunteers if you want to. SABs, staff, volunteers, all welcome. And obviously it's free because it's part of this brilliant conference. So students are facing a really weird welcome, and I know that lots of you are working really hard to put on a really good welcome, despite the fact that it's going to be socially distant. Lots of it's going to be online. You're not going to be able to do stuff in the same way as you have done before. I did a session yesterday as part of Comms by the Coast about relationships, not formats, and my key message in that was that I don't think you need a freshers fair. So I encourage you to watch the recording of that. I'll share it on social media after this so that you can watch that if you're interested. Maybe some of you attended. But it's all about kind of thinking differently this year about how we do student opportunities. Membership fees for student groups have always been a bit weird. It's often something that comes up that people go, oh, we'll deal with that in summer. And then in summer, you end up having loads and loads of other things to do. And then it's one of those things that just kind of rolls on. And we tend to carry on as usual and do things as we always have. Lots of the time, I know that your groups don't necessarily review and do a proper kind of decision making about what they charge. And they sometimes just increase charges because that's what happens, right? Like inflation's a thing. How often do they actually plan their activities, budget for those activities, and then work out what they need to charge in order to make those activities a reality, considering things like SU grant funding, other pots of funding, collaboration with other clubs and societies? I don't think that happens very often. And I don't think that's a pandemic problem. That's something that we are often trying to get our groups to think more strategically about how they manage their money. And membership fees is one part of that. So the problems, I love this picture, by the way. When I was looking for, I can't remember what I searched for in Canva to find this image, but it's just perfect. It's an upside down piggy bank. The problems that we already face are sports clubs charging more than societies, which I don't necessarily think is a holistic problem because sports is usually more expensive than societies anyway. But sometimes that culture just becomes the thing that happens and it isn't necessarily a conscious decision. Often for sports, you'll have to join an AU or a sports guild or something similar, then pay a membership fee for that club as well. And so there's sort of like a double paywall in order to get involved in that sports club. I know for some SUs that's part of how you manage the insurance that you give to your sports clubs, and it's a bit different to other types of activity. So again, not necessarily a huge problem, but just something that is a bit quirky about how we do memberships. Some student groups all just charge the same as they always have because that's what they've always charged, and why would we change it? We get good membership from that fee. and don't necessarily question it to go up or down. Some student groups, as I said before, kind of have that inflation without justification, similar to sometimes how we feel the government does things, but just pops a price increase on because it's 2020 now and things cost more. And then the last one, the bottom one, under the pig's ears, I think is the problem that comes up more often than not, where there's a charge for joining a club or society. Students join at the start of the year, usually at that welcome freshers period, and then they might not be able to actually participate because maybe there's not enough space on the team and there's only a first team and a second team and there's enough people for a third and fourth, but then you don't have the space to be able to have that much practice. Maybe they joined but thinking that it will all be okay, and then they realize that there's a timetable clash, which means that they can't attend the kind of weekly or fortnightly activities. Maybe they join, but then they don't feel comfortable participating because they don't feel like it's a space for them, or they thought that that society or activity or group was something different. And in all of those cases, some of those things just can't be avoided, and some of those things could be avoided if we think a bit more strategically about not just our membership fee, but our membership offer, and encouraging your student groups to think more strategically about that membership offer. The short story on this question. So I've been having this conversation for a few weeks now, maybe even a few months. Coronavirus has changed, well, everything. And there's a lot still up in the air for you as students' unions. I completely understand that. One of the question marks is, what do we do about membership fees? And the short answer on this is I think that you can still charge. I don't think that every students' union needs to holistically go down well, all student opportunities are free. I think in the conversations we'll have tomorrow, if we talked about that as a thing, as how would we do that? How would we make all student opportunities free? It has been done in some students' unions, and I don't know if there's anybody in the room today from places where they've done free student opportunities. My experience of talking to those unions is that it isn't as good as it sounds, and that there are kind of more problems than opportunities with doing completely free opportunities. Oh, so many opportunities, more opportunities with doing free opportunities. Anyway, and at the moment, with budgets being all over the place from your institutions, I'm not confident that going completely free is actually going to keep student opportunities going. So that's the short-ish answer, not so short actually. But I think that groups can still charge, but I think that needs to be a conscious decision. Things cost money. Stuff costs money. I've put on this slide with these dollars because I thought it was a fun background. Things cost money, and no student is naive to that, particularly right now. Absolutely, they are going to be facing questions around their accommodation. So maybe they've put deposits down on accommodation, but they're not going to be comfortable going to stay there. They'd rather stay at home or somewhere else. Or maybe they'd rather change their living environment if they've moved into a house with lots of people and they don't want to do that anymore. Students are concerned about paying full tuition fees for online teaching when that's not what they signed up for. So these are just a couple of the questions that students are having about money, and there's definitely more than ever before some more conscious thinking from students about what they're spending money on and whether it's worth that money. But as I said earlier, they're not naive. They know that things cost money. And if your clubs and societies, your student groups, your volunteering opportunities, if there is a charge for getting involved with those things, I think it's absolutely fine for those charges to continue as long as there's a really clear and honest justification to those charges. There's also a psychological argument to charging. So at the end of this session, I've got a links slide. So basically a slide with links to stuff I'll talk about today. So when you get the slides, you'll be able to click through and follow that. And I did a bit of Googling because there's just this assumption that don't put something for free because people won't value it. So really simple example, if you're selling something on Facebook Marketplace or buying something on Facebook Marketplace, if it's free, do you think, oh, maybe it's not worth it, or what's wrong with it? It's free, they're desperately trying to get rid of it. And then, so based on that assumption, I did a little bit of Googling, and I've included a couple of links at the end of the slide set about the kind of psychological argument for charging something for a product or a service or a membership. Yes, so the summary on this is that you can charge, there's potentially a benefit to charging in terms of the psychological argument, but we are in a global pandemic, so we do need to think about this. The other thing I wanted to say about charging is that, so one of the other question marks that's come up when having this conversation is around the Charity Commission, so the kind of one of the legal frameworks that we work in within students' unions. Do the Charity Commission say that we must charge for clubs and societies? No, not as far as I can see. Again, there's a link at the end to the link that I use to check this out. I'm not a governance expert or a lawyer, so it's worth checking if you're kind of particularly confused about this one. But from what I can see on the Charity Commission website, there isn't a line in there that says that there must be a charge for clubs and societies or for particular groups within your SU. It may well be that the governance sticky part comes from your own students' union constitution or your articles, bylaws, or your kind of groups policies. If it's written in policy that there needs to be a charge, then it might get more complicated to then remove that charge, because you may have to take that to trustee board, or it may need to go to an all student vote. So for those of you that aren't so connected to that governance part of the SU, if it's a thing that you're considering doing or changing, just check it out in your articles. And if you've got somebody, I'm sure somebody in your SU will have a handle on your governance, have a chat with them about it and see if there's any implications for your SU, because whilst most SUs have really similar governance setups, they're quite nuanced and there'll be different bits, and it will be kind of connected to different policies and bylaws. So I can't say holistically that, from a governance perspective, it's fine if you wanted to go free or if you wanted to change the charging model for your student groups. The final thing I wanted to say on this slide was why is a membership fee useful? So regardless of the financial benefit to having, if you think purely from the group's perspective, they will have a budget, they'll have some money to spend on doing some stuff. It also makes it a little bit easier to track who's involved in your clubs and societies and your student groups. Obviously for insurance purposes, if you've got people paying into something like an athletic union or a sports guild, or for their sports card or something, there's an easier tracking there if they've made a transaction, because to make a transaction they have to put their details in. So that's kind of another benefit to it. But you don't have to just keep it the same. You've got some options. More dollar signs. Sorry everyone, I just like the graphics and then couldn't find a pretty graphic with pound signs on, so let's just ignore the dollar signs. Your options, the summary of your options are remove the fees, keep the fees, or change the fees. And I know that's simplistic, but you could do that holistically across all of your groups and all of your societies, all of your clubs. You could make individual decisions case by case. And so you could remove fees altogether and make opportunities free. You could keep all fees the same, or you could change stuff. From your perspective as a student union, I think it's really important to have the conversation across the team, all of the decision makers that need to be involved in the kind of principle that you're going with. So are we going to remove fees altogether? Are we going to keep fees the same and not change that at all? Or are we going to make a change? Because if you're going to keep them, then your job is just a communication exercise with your student groups to tell them that you don't expect there to be any increases, and that you would encourage them to keep their fees the same. And that's fine. That is fine. But I think the communication is really important. Often we do things in preparation for the welcome period, and there's so much going on, and we're in a bit of a rhythm with our student groups and our committees. So our committees will be basing a lot of their information on what their handover has been has told them, or what the previous committee or other committees have told them happens. And so it's really important right now that you're being as transparent as possible with your committees, keeping them in the loop with decisions that are being made, but also keeping them in the loop with stuff that you don't know yet, because I'm imagining a situation where you've got committees all over the place, thinking now about going back to university or college and going back to a welcome experience where there's going to be activities, there maybe is going to be a fair, maybe not, regardless, they want people to join their activities, and they're thinking, how are we going to do that, what decisions do we need to make to prepare for that? And one of those things will be around fees. So the sooner you can make a decision about it and inform them all of that decision, or the process that you're going through to make that decision, the better. One of the things that has been fed back to Organised Fun quite a lot recently, because we worked with the student media organisations, SPA, NASTA and SRA, and we worked with the Student Volunteering Network and NASFA, the Student Fundraising Association. So these are all groups that represent the different parts of student opportunities. And one of the things that all of them fed back to us that's not necessarily an issue, but something that they're aware of, is when student union decision making doesn't get communicated to those groups. That's probably the biggest problem area, particularly for student media. And I know that for a lot of you, student media is an area where they require a little bit more love and attention. And there's a session actually on Thursday that the 3 student media organisations are hosting about working with their student union. So that'll be an interesting one if you're considering the kind of relationship you have with your media. But yeah, what we hear a lot is that student groups want to be informed of what's going on, and even if that information is, we're not sure yet, but this is what we're doing to find out, then that's better than just keeping quiet and letting them assume that things are as normal, or letting them assume the worst. So in terms of removing, keeping and changing, you can remove membership fees for all groups. You could remove membership fees for some groups. You could keep fees the same across groups. You could change membership fees across groups, and we'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. You can change some groups' membership fees to termly. You could change all membership to termly. And I think termly is going to be a really positive step forward for those of you that perhaps don't want to change or can't change the actual fee figure, but want to give students a little bit more flexibility in their membership. And again, constitutionally, it shouldn't be a problem. Check your own bylaws and constitution and articles, but I think that's a really positive way forward. If you are uncomfortable with changing the fees, or your groups are uncomfortable with changing the fees, can you offer it costs this much for first term, this much for second term, this much for third term, or if you've got more terms than that, break it down in a different way. And then that gives students the chance to join, and then we are avoiding some of that that last bit on the upside down piggy bank image of a student joining and then not being able to actually participate or not enjoying it. There's nothing wrong with a student just going, well, I joined and this wasn't for me. In my first year at university, I think I joined about 14 societies and then actually went to about 4 of them. So it's common. We all know that's common. And I think we need to be really, whether we're in a pandemic or not, we need to be really fair about that decision making and help students to have a transparent relationship with their groups and memberships. So in terms of, this is my kind of last bit to talk to you about, and then we'll open it up for questions and discussion. In terms of the value and how do you help your student groups to go through that decision making, and I would encourage you to, as much as possible, to avoid just making that decision for them. If you can, and if there's time and it's appropriate, involve them in the decision making, devolve that decision to those committees as much as possible, because there's going to be a lot of change happening. There's going to be lots of things that they're not so involved with in terms of the decision making, And this is really one where you need their involvement, you need them to make those decisions, and then you need them to tell you what they want to spend that membership fee on. So how do you actually decide the value of a membership? And I think this is something that's not talked about enough in student opportunities, and is a good thing for us to have a discussion about now. And I'm glad that the pandemic's brought this up right now, to be honest. In researching for this section of this talk, I did lots of Googling of like value propositions and cost benefits analysis, which is why I've put time for some business chat in here, because I think this is the most businessy I've ever had to talk about at a conference session. And then I had some fun, and I made a little fun picture here because I couldn't find an image that summed up what I wanted to say enough. So I've made one. You're welcome. You can tell what I did last night when I was supposed to be at the allotment weeding, and just gave you way too much information about my personal life there. Sorry. So person blue has found out about the societies on offer, and they are looking around. Maybe they're at a virtual freshers fair, maybe they are on the SU website, maybe they're on social media, and they're like, oh, why should I join your society? And so often we see the pink person, society A, we see that narrative. And I think, don't get me wrong, I think lots and lots of societies are better than this, and I've simplified it for the purpose of this session. But it does surprise me how often that narrative isn't very strong, and that kind of without being too simplistic, that business case just isn't very strong, and they're not great at selling their story. And you see this kind of shouting, oh, it's really good, it's really fun, it's nice. And absolutely, having a fun time and talking about it being good is great. But our societies, our sports clubs, our groups need to be better at being a bit more like Society B on this image. So, well, they say, you get to access our wonderful alumni network, and we've got 100 people in our alumni network who used to be part of this society, who are now connected to our society. You get to be part of the community, whether that community is Harry Potter Society, History Society, or hockey. You're still part of a community, and that's a really hard sell on being involved, because we know that being involved in student opportunities helps students to feel less lonely. We know that it helps students to make friends. People find their relationships in their clubs and societies. I know a lot of people that met and are now married because they met through societies. So it's really valuable being part of that community. And obviously for our liberation societies, that community bit is all the more important. You'll get to meet new people, networking, whether that's in a friendship perspective or kind of more of that employability perspective, that you'll get to network with industry professionals, or you'll get to network with academics in your field. That's all really helpful. Maybe for sports, or for some societies and hobby and interest groups that have specific equipment. So I'm thinking obviously sports equipment, but also kind of for student media, that digital equipment, or for photography societies, access to cameras, that kind of stuff. You'll get access to that stuff either discounted, or you get to use it for free as part of this group. Obviously there's socials, but I think selling those socials as that opportunity to meet people, being part of a community, have fun, that's a really good sell. There's stash, so I've put on here a members hoodie, and I think as much as stash is sort of like a sort of fun aside of lots of student opportunities groups, I think that's going to be really important in the coming year, because we're going to have a lot of students who are spending a lot of time at home on their own, and when they are visiting campuses, having those kind of visual indicators that someone is part of something that's the same as you is going to really help for that feeling of community and being connected to each other. So now is the year for stash. And then also the final thing is access to training. Maybe through that society they get access to professional training, or training in that hobby or interest, or academic societies get access to things that are going to help with their studies, Or maybe, obviously, for sports clubs, you get access to training, fitness, you get access to sports massage, that kind of stuff. Being really clear about what your membership offer is going to really help justify any payment that is being made. And that's where you have students who are potentially joining thinking, is this a good investment of my time and money? Why is it a good investment in my time and money? Because it's not just about that financial investment. Students are really thinking carefully about how they spend their time, and this was pre-pandemic, but definitely if you've got lots and lots of virtual activities happening, it really needs to be sold as a good investment and a good thing to be spending their time doing. And then the final thing that I think lots of our student groups miss out on is what's unique or special about this opportunity. Maybe it's that you get access to certain stuff that other people don't. Maybe it's the type of people that are involved. Maybe it's the type of activities that you're doing. Selling that unique story is the bit that will help people to make that decision and to be able to see if it's for them or not, which I think is really important. Also, in terms of this decision making, we really do need to think at this stage about how inclusive our student groups are and how we make as many people as possible feel welcome and see if that thing is for them. That's where I think termly membership fees are going to be really interesting, because it gives students an opportunity to not have that investment for a whole year if they don't feel safe in that space, or if they don't feel comfortable, or it's just not for them. That's okay. It also means that you can monitor engagement over the year, which is important. Freebie alert. So I have made a thing to help your student groups to be able to think about this in a different way. What I would love to see is student groups making decisions about their membership fees based on their offer and based on what their budget needs to be, rather than doing it the other way around. So what we see lots and lots of times is, well, we charge £5 for membership and we usually get about 40 members. So that's how much our budget is. And then if we want to do other stuff, we'll ask the SU for grant funding. And I know that some student unions encourage their student groups to do budgets before. I think sometimes we make these a bit too complicated, and they're kind of a big complicated spreadsheet that lots of student groups look at and just go, oh gosh, well, I'm not even there yet. I'm just thinking about the hoodie color at the moment. I've made this tool. It's very simplistic. It's not your complicated budget. It's not to replace your complicated budget that you need them to do if you do that. It's to get them to try and think about the value that they're offering to their members, and therefore what their membership fee should be. So space for a group name. And then the first question is, what activities and events are you offering? So what are those things that people can get from being involved in your student group, or involved in your RAG, or involved in your student media? What does it cost to organise these? And I know that box is small, but I don't expect them to go into loads of detail about that. But I'm thinking it's a social and it's online. Are there any actual costs to that? No, zero. That would be zero. But then say for a social, you want to be able to send everybody like a snack box in the post, or you want people to be able to get a t-shirt as part of this social. Okay, so that's maybe like £5 for the snack box and £5 for the t-shirt. So the cost of that activity is £10 per member. But if you get over 50 members, it will be £8 per member. So put £8 to £10. What extra benefits are there to membership of your group? So these might not necessarily be things like socials, but this might be that you've got your alumni network, for example. Is there a cost for arranging this? Well, probably not for supporting an alumni network, but if you want to invite some of your alumni to come and do a talk in the spring term, then there might be a cost associated with that, which is maybe £40 in speaker expenses. And then so you can put that cost in there and think about that. Obviously, as you can see, it's a simple model. It doesn't cover everything, but the point of it is to get your student groups to think a little bit more about this that way round, rather than thinking, okay, I've generated £200 in membership fees. What can we do with that money? oh no, we've run out of money, let's ask for grant funding. So that's the purpose of the tool. I wanted to be able to share it with you in an easy way. So we're going to put it online on the organise.fun website. But I am going to be sending a Student Opportunities Digest, which is our mailing list, out tomorrow evening. So Jamie and I are collating that tomorrow, and we'll pop a link to it in there. So the best way to, this is such a plug, but join our digest, and you'll get access to things like this, but we'll also tell you about some of the cool stuff that's going on in the world of student opportunities. So hopefully that's useful. This is what we've talked about. So just to summarise before we go to questions, membership fees were already a little bit of a conundrum, and those problems are still there. COVID is actually a really interesting opportunity for us to change the culture around that a little bit. The short answer, which I will tell anybody, is that charging is fine, but you need to justify that decision, and you need to involve your student groups in that decision making. And we've talked through a couple of things that can help you to work out what the value is of clubs and societies, and work with your groups to justify their own value and to think differently about their budgeting for the year. Here's a links list. So people don't value free stuff. That's that kind of psychology link that I mentioned earlier. The Charity Commission bit regarding students' unions, that for governance nerds, I'm sure you've already seen, but for those of you that aren't into governance, have a look. It's ever so exciting. There's a piece on membership models. It's like a long read blog on how to create a membership model. It's not written for student unions specifically, but I found it a really useful reference tool when writing this session. And then there's a link in there for you to join the mailing list if you didn't find it from the previous slide. So thank you. I am going to do some questions. We've had one question. What do you think about offering premium memberships alongside standard free memberships? Oh, that's an interesting one. Carlos, like what, I don't know whether there's a huge difference between a premium membership or a standard or free membership. It would be interesting if you can put in the chat what the difference is, or if you've seen examples of that before. That would be really interesting. I suppose it would solve some of those problems. If you're having different types of membership, it might become a bit complicated, because obviously what I haven't talked about in this is things like associate membership for university or college staff, or associate membership for alumni and that kind of stuff. So if you've then got like associate membership and premium membership and standard membership, there might be just a few too many models. So again, if you can clarify in the chat like what the difference is, it would be helpful to discuss that one. I think Corella, what are people's thoughts regarding memberships if societies are made to go 100% online this year? Example, we have a dance society, but dance classes can only go online. It's normally £35 a year. Just interested in people's thoughts. So what does everybody think about that? Like if we're telling our student groups that everything is online right through to July 2021, pop in the chat how many of you would change the membership model if that was the case. I think, Corella, that it's all about that justification. So if your members of your dance society are still getting a really good experience and they're still going to be able to dance, then absolutely you can still charge a membership. The cost associated, the £35 will have come from somewhere. So probably I would expect from some merch and from some higher fees potentially for spaces. You might get the space for free, potentially for some instructors if you haven't got student instructors, or if you have to pay for instructors. So in terms of like it may not need to be £35 per year, but I think charging kind of £15-20 for online dance classes for a year is a bargain, and as long as you can justify that pricing, then it's not a problem at all. Hattie's put a really good comment about asking the committee to like invest more time into the social aspect and other things, so that if you want to keep that £35 and make it an all-round experience, Jamie's put expect them to reduce the price if it was only online classes, which is interesting. Yeah, really interesting. We've got a couple more minutes for any more questions if anyone has anything about stuff we've said. Any more from any more? Okay, Carlos has talked a little bit more about this different membership model. So a free membership for joining events, or a charged membership for full access to exclusive events, material, mailing lists, any sort of advantage. I think on summary, I think you're probably making more work than it's worth. And actually, it would probably be better to have a really solid membership offer that's just the membership of that society or group, rather than having the 2 tiers, because I think there's likely to be some confusion from the student perspective, and difficulty in terms of like the admin of setting that up, and what do free members get and what do premium members get. So I think, yeah, on reflection, I'd probably just keep one type of membership, but if anybody thinks differently, then pop it in the chat and we could have a chat about that. Any other questions? We'll just give it like 2 minutes. No? Okay. Brilliant. Well, thanks. I think there's a little bit of networking happening in the chat. So like Hattie has done. So Hattie's said, add me on Twitter or Facebook. Please do that if you want to carry on chatting about this stuff. Thank you for attending this session. Really appreciate all of you spending your time with me this afternoon, and hopefully see some of you tomorrow in the Keeping Student Opportunities Going session.